Greetings, everyone. What's up? What's up? Thank you so much for being with us today. We, as the All African People's Revolutionary Party and the All African Women's Revolutionary Union, welcome you to another edition of Our Ancestors' Voices. We are very, very happy that you are here with us today. We are thrilled and grateful that you are here with us today. We do this weekly seminar, and it's on behalf of the All African People's Revolutionary Party and the All African Women's Revolutionary Union. We always start by acknowledging our African ancestors, and we like to acknowledge our comrades of the Western Hemisphere, our indigenous comrades of the Western Hemisphere. And so we just want to acknowledge the work that our comrades have been doing, our indigenous comrades have been doing. We thank you for working with us and for continued struggle of getting your land back. We are with you. We see you. We have not forgotten about you. And we are doing everything in our power to continue that fight with you. And we just thank you so much for being with us here today. We are going to start off with our introductions and jump right into our topic of what is patriarchy and who is impacted. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this broadcast is actually called Our Ancestors' Voices, and it is sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party and the All African Women's Revolutionary Union. The All African People's Revolutionary Party is short for the AAPRP. So the AAPRP is a revolutionary, independent, mass, Pan-African political party that is based out of Africa. We are so proud of that. And we are here to tell you that the reason we are based out of Africa is because we understand that the issues that African people are facing everywhere did not start in the US. They did not start in Mississippi. They did not start in Miami. They didn't start in North Carolina. They didn't start in Brooklyn. They started in Africa when our land was stolen from us. They Africa when some of our ancestors were abducted and captured. That is where the issues begin. And so we, as a mass independent organization, have established chapters throughout the continent of Africa so that we can do that work to push back and to regain control of our resources. Part of why this work is so important is because we are determined to achieve a one unified socialist Africa. And we understand that the focus of our work is the primacy of Africa, because as I said, that's where the issue started. But we also understand that we're not going to be able to maintain control and help to build up the fact that we are not in control, to regain control of resources, to be able to determine and disseminate how those resources are created, developed, exploited, sent, profited for, whatever that looks like. We're not going to be able to do any of that if we're not under a economic system that is both humane and that values that align with our values. And that's why we're pushing for a one unified socialist Africa. This is also what we mean when we say that we are Pan-African. And so just connecting all of that, you can see and learn more about that concept specifically from the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. This book was written by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and he is definitely one of our amazing founders who has established this beautiful organization that is here with you today, presenting on this topic. Had it not been for Dr. Nkrumah writing about these things, we wouldn't have really have had the guide and the mapping, if you will, to understand how this process is actually come about. Because really what he's talking about in the Revolutionary Warfare Handbook is really what it means for all these different organizations to come together so that they can actually have more of a coordination of political organization, right? And so he talks about that. He talks about the idea of militaries coming together and, again, speaking to this idea of a Pan-African United States of Africa, right? So with that being said, this seminar is hosted weekly, every week by this comrade by the name of Ajamu Umi. He is a longtime organizer with the All African People's Revolutionary Party. I am also joining him and have been hosting with him for a moment. We are related by blood, and I am approaching 7 years of being in this organization. So, very, very happy to be with you today. We are very excited to talk about can marginalized genders benefit or not benefit from patriarchy. And so, without further ado, if you could advance to the next slide, please, get us started. Thank you so much. So I want to start with kind of helping us to just kind of think about this a little bit larger, right? So what is the issue? What am I talking about and why is patriarchy such an issue, right? So we need to start by thinking about how under the rule of patriarchy, we're also talking about misogyny, right? We're talking about the fact that there are several different ways that this can really be understood. And when we think about misogyny, we need to understand that it is rooted within patriarchy, right? We need to understand that today we're talking about patriarchy, and we want to be clear, we're not saying that men aren't actually harmed from the system that they also benefit from. I just want to be clear when I say that. And so we can give you some examples actually by speaking to the fact that with patriarchy, there are assumptions that are made where you, as an individual, if you are male identifying, it looks like I'm freezing up a little bit, so I hope I'm okay. You, as an individual, if you are male identifying, you have responsibilities to provide for your family, right? That's the system that we live in. That's how we are propagandized. That's how we are cultivated. That's what we understand. So when you lose your job, then it becomes that you are not doing what you should have done. You should have done better. You should have planned better. There's all this pressure that comes against you. If you're not able to provide for your family, you have failed somehow in this system. You let your family down. You didn't prioritize yourself enough. You should have done better. And I'm speaking to this larger issue where there's so much toxicity that is rooted within misogyny and being a male and benefiting from patriarchy that we don't focus enough on how harmful this system is actually for male identifying people. And it is harmful for non-males. I will get into that in just a moment. But I want to just kind of mention that because I think it's important even for male identifying people who benefit so much and fail to realize how much they benefit. I want you to even think about the words that I'm saying right now. When you lose your job, no one has to care about your mental health because I think that, I guess, people who focus on mental health are too feminine. I guess, I don't know. Like, we all need to focus on our mental health. We live in a terrible society where people are constantly subjecting us and constantly not being not being honorable, they're not being consistent, they're not being trustworthy, they're not dependable. I mean, there are several reasons to feel like you are at a loss and that you are in need of guidance or compassion or companionship, whatever that looks like. But we don't focus on those kind of things because I think for most people, they think that if you are male identifying, you're supposed to have your ish together. You're not supposed to need for any of these human connections that make you a human, by the way. Okay. You're not supposed to need for any of those things. And if you do need for them, then it means that you are weak, you are incompetent, you are incapable. And not only is that simply not true from several research studies that have proven against that, but more importantly, that's not the human experience. At our core, all of us need to be connected to some other human being. That's a biological need that we all have. That's why when you give birth to your child and your child comes out and your child is fussy and upset, this is why researchers have suggested that you apply skin to skin. The parents in the room know what I'm talking about, where you can literally take the child's clothes off their back, you take your clothes off your back, and you just lay that baby on your chest and watch how soothing it is for that baby. Watch how they calm down instantly. Watch how they are not upset anymore because they can hear your heartbeat. If you gave birth to the child, they know your heartbeat very well because they heard it for 9 months. They can smell you. They know what you smell like. So like I don't want to hear this, it's not manly to have needs and to feel wanted or valued or to connect with society. That's absolutely absurd. But that is the propaganda under misogyny, under patriarchy, where you have more value because you are a male identifying person. And so, because of that, you don't need to need those things. And if you do need those things, something must be wrong with you. And that's problematic, you all. That's problematic. And we need to call it, we need to name it, and we need to say that that does not make any sense. And that's a terrible thing to even execute or to promote. That's unacceptable. This is also the reason why a lot of male identifying people think that, a lot of they call it the male loneliness phenomenon now, where, more and more non-males are choosing to be single instead of being in relationships because they don't want to tolerate the blatant disrespect, but also the dehumanization that they are facing. And therefore, the male identifying people, they can't even see that because they're so busy trying to hold on to something that they used to have, which means perpetuating very toxic ideas, perpetuating a toxic environment that other people just simply don't want to tolerate and be a part of. There's also this piece about, understanding what it means to give excuses for poor and harmful behavior, right? So this idea of expecting control and dominance because you are a male, that's absurd. And that's not really a partnership. So I think we should even ask the question, like, what are you looking for? Not just in intimate relationships, but what are you looking for as a male in any of your relationships? Are you looking to just do things by yourself all the time, every day? At some point, that's got to get old, right? Because again, you're not in this world by yourself. You're in this world with other people. And if you're not in a position where you can accept the fact that you might need help at some point, if you can accept the fact that it is actually very much revolutionary and it is very much collective and socialist for you to ask for help, because people are there to help you. Your loved ones don't want to see you struggling. They don't want to see you suffering. They would love nothing more to help you. And if you don't have loved ones that want to help you, find some. Build a new community. Find some people who got your back and they're not going to gaslight you when you ask for help. That's the problem now is we live under a capitalist regime where we can't ask for help. And if we do, it's not just reflected on males, it's reflected on other people that we're weak, that we're incapable, that we're not strong enough, that we are not, competent. That's bull, you all. It is bull. It is nonsense, and we need to name it and deflect it and erase it and eradicate it. That is what we need to do. That is simply unacceptable. That is unacceptable because now we're not in even a position where we can start to create what a healthy relationship looks like because we don't even know how to ask for help. We don't know how to accept help, and we don't know how to just be okay with the fact that everything doesn't have to fall on our shoulders. Again, like that pressure, that's not healthy, y'all. That is not healthy at all. That is not healthy. That is not healthy. This is why I say personally, like, this is why the word partner means so much to me because I really want things to have more of an equitable relationship to them. But everybody doesn't want that. So you have to kind of think about, like, as a male, if you are actively trying to resist patriarchy, what does that mean for you? What does that mean in terms of you advocating your needs to your partner? What does that mean in terms of you being vulnerable? Again, that's not masculine to do that. But who says it's not? Who says it's not? Some straight European man from Europe? Why are we listening to them anymore? Why? Why are we listening to them? How has that been helpful for us up to this point? How has that helped African people achieve our resources and gain control of our land? Have we done it using their influence and definition? No, we have not. So I would suggest that we try a different approach because that's obviously not working for us. It's obviously not working for us to be homophobic and to be ableist. Those things are not working for us. We need to check ourselves and try again. And that includes being patriarchal. That includes understanding just how embedded and how evil this system is, because it is, in fact, a system that unfairly advantages male identifying people while unfairly disadvantaging non male people and women. And that's not going to help us achieve this larger goal of what we're aiming for. So we need to think about that more, you all. We also need to think about, it's not just about achieving a one unified free Africa, because we are in solidarity with Palestinian people, we are in solidarity with our Irish folks, we are in solidarity with so many folks. So if we are trying to achieve any of these free lands, whether it's Palestine, whether it's Ireland, whether it's the Western Hemisphere, the Philippines, I would argue patriarchy has got to go. And that, therefore, we have got to think deeply about what that means for us in terms of releasing that and releasing the perpetuation that we all are guilty of. Because again, this system has inflicted itself on all of us. So, how are all of us guilty of perpetuating it? And then, therefore, how can we start to challenge what it means to not enforce it as much? Next slide, please. All right. So I also want to highlight a couple of things here. I'm sure you all remember this. debate on social media. I guess a couple of years ago now. I feel like it was still post immediate COVID, but like not, we weren't out of the woods yet, COVID, if that makes sense. So, anywho, there was an argument, in case you're not familiar, where this question was circulating around social media. You know, they were asking non-male people, women identifying people, if you had to be trapped in a room with a male or a bear, which one would you choose, right? And so a lot of the non-male people and a lot of the women identifying people chose a bear, and that upset quite a few male identifying people, right? And so I just want to kind of highlight a couple of things here because this question is coming up again. And I'll play a video in just a moment from Dulce there where you can see why she's responding to that, but also her analysis that even comes up behind why she answered the way she did. So I just want to highlight first and foremost, if you are a male identifying person and you're listening to this broadcast right now, you need to take responsibility that you benefit from patriarchy. That's it. Take responsibility for that. Own up to it, acknowledge it, think about it before you reject it. Think about it. Think about it. Think about the fact that your privilege alone might be the reason why you're thinking of rejecting it, and only privileged people would think to say that they don't have privilege. So just think about that for a minute. And I want you to sit with that uncomfortableness. I want you to really sit with it. I know it's uncomfortable. I know. Because when I am trying to do work with queer identifying folks, I don't like that my privilege as a heterosexual person is showing. I try my best to tame that as much as I can. So I understand that it might be uncomfortable for you. I do. At the end of the day, though, it's really not about how you feel. It's about using your privilege to make a difference for those that are less advantaged than you. That's what it's about. That's the collectivist way. So not only do I want you to sit with it and be uncomfortable right now, but I also want you to think about, are you feeling uncomfortable because your emotions are getting the best of you, where you don't want to think about the fact that you are a part of the problem? Is that why this is making you uncomfortable? Or are you worried that you are probably not admitting that you're a part of the problem because it's easier to avoid it and to suppress it than to actually face it head on and look at it and hold yourself accountable? Like you need to think deeply about that, right? I think that personally, like if we were to ask, white supremacists, why do you think you're racist? And they would say, I'm not racist. I have children that date African men. Like, I'm not racist, like, because they all say that, right? Just like males say they don't benefit from patriarchy, right? African men, I don't benefit from that's a white man's thing. Okay, all right. And then you have straight people that say that they're not homophobic, right? Because their best friend is trans, right? Okay. So I would argue people say that when they are, in fact, a part of the problem because they don't want to admit that they are a part of the problem, or maybe they feel guilty that they're adding to the problem. And instead of them just not doing that anymore, I think it's easier for them to like just think about, that's not me. I would never do that because I have a trans friend. So how could I be homophobic, right? Well, you could still very much be homophobic, and you could be homophobic towards your trans friend. And if you're not even acknowledging it, then you're part of the problem, literally a part of the problem, harming your trans friend, literally in that moment, right? So there's that. And then also, this is why I said earlier, can we separate the emotion? Because if your emotions are blocking you from taking responsibility for the fact that you are a part of the problem, then you're not going to hear anything I'm saying right now, because you just can't accept that you're a part of the problem, because it just makes you so upset that I've offended you. But separate the emotion from the logic. The evidence suggests that you do benefit from patriarchy. The evidence suggests you benefit from misogyny. The evidence suggests that you perpetuate those things because you like that reality. And if you don't agree with me, and if you're a male identifying person, I would ask you right now, would you be willing to trade places with me and live my life as an African descent woman who has constantly got her head on a swivel because she knows what the statistical rates are for women who are abducted on the streets, for African trans women who are abducted on the streets, for African women and indigenous native women who are abducted on the streets? The fact that I don't even know if I can live through giving birth to my child because I might die. Would you trade places with me right now, knowing the things that I've just said? And that's just barely scratching the surface. Not to mention the fact that I don't get paid the wage that I deserve to make because I'm not a male. Would you trade places with me right now? I really want you to think about that question. And I can tell you, you're going to say no. Of course, you're going to say no. Don't pretend like you would say yes. You're going to say no. Why would you say no? Because you know that your life is better than my life. And you know that you don't want any part of what I'm dealing with, because you know that my life is not as sophisticated, I'll say that, as your life. Even though you don't want to admit you have privilege, you just admitted it. You just admitted it. You understand? So we got to get past that, you all. We have to get past that. And this is why I'm saying you have to look at it and just be uncomfortable because it is what it is. Okay. It is what it is. That's what it is. Okay. We also need to think about who is perpetuating patriarchy. Because again, I said that it can be harmful to male identifying people. So I'm not here to point fingers. I'm here to name evidence and to state the truth. Okay. So this also means that colonized people can perpetuate patriarchy. Patriarchy is very active in the indigenous community with the machismo, is very active in the African community with like different practices and cultural spiritual religions that we've embedded. I would argue many if not all religions are rooted in some form of patriarchy or another. That's partly why I haven't been able to really convert, because I don't agree with any of them, because they all have some type of phenomenon where males are more valuable and powerful than non-males, and I simply don't agree with that. I do not agree with that. Right? We could even think about, like there's a cultural practice that my cousin does at the beginning of the year. She wants to bless her house. So everybody exits the house, and she will not walk into her own house, until a male walks in first. I don't know. I'd have to talk to some ancestors about that, but I think that that is extremely patriarchal. I don't agree with it. It'd be different if the male was walking in with a non-male because they live there together because she's married. That would be different. But to just simply argue that he only has the power to stop bad forces by himself, not only is that not a good plan, because then the forces can just come inside of him and then he's possessed, right? But second, like, why should that just be on him? And why shouldn't she have enough assertion to understand she also can protect her house? That's just absurd to me. I don't agree with it, and that's absurd. And that's just one example that we could talk about. So yeah, colonized people very much can perpetuate it. I would also argue, some folks, depending on their upbringing and their raisings, definitely has a lot to do more with that. When people leave relationships and people will say, well, you should have done more as the woman, you should have cooked more meals, you should have ironed his clothes. That's patriarchal, you all. That's patriarchal. People don't even iron clothes anymore. You have the little liquid that you can spray on your clothes to get the starch out. So I don't want to hear that. It's patriarchal. We need to stop that behavior. We need to stop it. It's unacceptable. We need to stop it. It's harmful. Okay. I would say other populations too. I've witnessed patriarchal values in the queer community. I have, because it's a system that still impacts every single one of us. So it's not just if you're straight you are harmed by it or you benefit from it. Even if you identify as being queer, you still have some type of leash to it. You have some type of tether to it, because being patriarchal, especially if you are a male identifying person in the queer community, is still a benefit for you in terms of you still having the values that are assigned and assimilated with it. And I'm just thinking about, like, again, like, would we want to trade places with a non-male? No, because we understand that their life is not as quality as ours. We do have the ability to assert ourselves. Am I saying that African men don't have oppression that they face? No. What I'm saying is they are less likely to have faced the same oppressions as me. That's what I'm saying. And people know that. That's why you wouldn't want to trade places. So because you don't want to trade, even if you identify as being queer, it doesn't matter. You're still perpetuating that, and therefore you still benefit from it, which means you are a part of the problem if you're perpetuating it and if you're not fighting against it. And that is the truth. That is the truth. Anyone who enforces the systemic oppression is enforcing patriarchy. Anyone who embraces it and does not resist it. I'll also say that I saw this quote on Instagram, super interesting. The women want men who don't exist yet. Men want women who no longer exist. And you can think about that what you will. Okay. All right. Let's listen to what Dulce has to say. Okay, no worries. No worries. She pretty much said everything that I just said. So she just went on to say not only would she choose to be in the room with the bear, but she also gave an explanation and said, as a non-male, we are taught in this society that we need to learn how to defend ourselves. So we take self-defense classes. We read up on books about, techniques about, protecting ourselves. We buy pepper spray. We buy these things so that we can, know how to use them in the event that we get attacked. And then she said, and then when we get attacked, you don't believe us. And she's absolutely right. So it's just very interesting to me that, again, society is profiting, because that's the capitalism, it's profiting off of our fear, our harm, and our ability to try to protect ourselves, because all that stuff costs money. So I want you to notice that. And then when we do invest in all that stuff, and then this thing happens to us where we are disrespected, our boundaries are disrespected, people don't value us, and they think they can just do whatever they want because they're men and they're not used to being told no and respecting that and leaving it alone, because some men don't know how to deal with rejection. I'm just being honest. You need to accept it. And this is why you need to work on healing yourself, because some of you think that women walking around are dolls and trophies that you can just ascertain for your pleasure. That is unacceptable. And you are a part of the problem. That is unacceptable. So then when she does reject you, you get offended because you're all up in your feelings, because that's the emotion, and you don't know how to just healthily walk away from that situation. So don't say is absolutely correct in saying that. I couldn't agree more with that. Next slide, please. All right. So I also think that, we need to think a little bit more deeply about whose problem this is that we need to be fighting, right? Whose problem is this that needs to be fighting this, right? So is this just on non-male people? Is this just an issue for male identifying people? Like, that's a question that you all need to ask yourselves, right? I would argue that if you think this is a problem that only non-male people should be fighting, women identifying people should be fighting, I would argue you're a part of the problem. Yeah, okay, I'm freezing up. Let me make sure I say that again. If you think that non-male people and women are the only ones who should be fighting this issue, you're a part of the problem. You are. Because to think that would argue that you don't take any responsibility for how you're playing into the problem, which means, as the saying goes, you're either a part of the solution or you're a part of the problem. So that means that now I need to figure out how to now convince you that this is a problem that I still have to fix. And if you're not even willing to take responsibility or come on board and help me, that's not really doing a disservice, right? So I just think we have to think about that a little bit deeply, because that's deep. It's really deep. It looks like I'm not as freezing anymore. So yeah, basically you either take responsibility and you fight with the people who are oppressed. If you don't, then you're a part of the problem. You very much are, because that means that you don't really want to admit that you benefit from the same system they're fighting, and then you think that they should just be the only ones fighting it. How is that fair? And I would just make the argument, African women understand that colonialism and white supremacy are impacting all African people. So we stand with all African people and we fight with them. So how come y'all can't fight with us? What's up with that? Or is it that you want a unified socialist Africa, but you still want patriarchy in this new world? Just be honest and tell us so that we can understand you're a part of the problem. Just let us know so we can understand that, because this is not how this is supposed to go. It's not how it's supposed to go. So, we can think that there's a contradiction when it comes to the group being oppressed and how they should have to single-handedly do it themselves. And that is a contradiction within itself. I also want to say that this idea of it being not your problem or not your attitude, that very much has got to go. And like I said, you have African people as a whole who are fighting against colonialism, white supremacy. So why can't African people as a whole fight against ableism? Why can't African people as a whole fight against patriarchy? Why is it different? Colonialism impacts all of us, but so does ableism. So does patriarchy, right? So we got to take responsibility. If you're not a part of the problem, then continue to do the work that you're doing so that your actions can speak louder than words and we can see that. But if you are a part of the problem, then we're talking about you, and you need to do some serious self evaluation. Also, I want you to think about how you're not my problem, not my attitude. How is that really helping us to achieve a Pan Africanist Africa? You're being selfish. How is that helping us? You're being individualistic. That's bringing in the capitalist values. We're trying to get away from capitalism. So you should really think about that on a very deep level. You should think about that. I need African men to take ownership and to admit the obvious contradiction. Take ownership and admit it. Making excuses, saying that you're not a part of the problem is unacceptable. African men claim that they want to be protectors and providers, right? That's what I see when I'm going out on social media and all these things, right? Yet you are the ones causing the most harm to African non-males and to women by enforcing the oppressive system that marginalizes genders in the first place. So you're not being a protector. You're not being a provider, actually. If you were causing more harm to her, than even the European white man is causing. Think about that. She's supposed to feel safe and valued and respected with you, and you are oppressing her every single moment that she is in the space with you. How is that supposed to be freeing? How is that supposed to be peaceful? How is that supposed to achieve this unified socialist system that we are working so hard to get? We should think about that. Let go of your ego. Let go of your ego. It has no place here. Let go of it. This is nothing but a learning opportunity for you, especially if you're just now learning that you're a part of the problem, then you have much to learn. So sit down and let go of your ego. I would argue that even as a culture, we need to really think about what does it mean to define masculinity and femininity, because I don't think we have the correct definitions. I think we should leave that up to the people to decide what those words mean. But I think we should be very careful when we are enforcing those definitions for ourselves. Because when we see male identifying people who are acting feminine and we shame them for that, that is a problem. And we need to take responsibility for that. If we see non-male people acting masculine, I would say that's also a problem. If we're shaming them, I'm saying them acting masculine is not a problem. But if we're shaming them for that because we don't think they're being feminine enough, well, who are we to say that? Again, where did that definition come from? If it came from Eurocentric values, I don't want to hear it, and we should not be perpetuating it. And I'm pretty sure that's where it came from. So we got to think about that, you all. Think about how harmful that is to us. Think about what that looks like, especially if those definitions are being defined under white supremacy. That's problematic. What would a healthy definition be? What would that even look like? Again, we talked about this idea of what that looks like. And then last but not least, before I turn it over to Baba Ajamu, think about the impact this is having on our children. What kind of world do we want them to live in? What kind of ideas and environments do we want them to have? Do we want them to continue with what they're seeing now, where male identifying people are accusing non males of increasing the unalive rates for males? That's unacceptable, you all. We have got to take responsibility for that. Males have got to take responsibility for that. Patriarchy is to blame for that, not non-male people. How would we cause you to unalive yourself? That doesn't even make any sense, you all. You have got to take responsibility. I have to tell you, as a single woman, that is not attractive to me. That is so not attractive to me that you don't even know how to take any responsibility. I can't use that in my business. As my grandfather would say, I cannot use that in my business. So we need to do better. Like these green flag foundations, taking responsibility, resisting patriarchy because you know you benefit from it, but you're trying to push against it, using your privilege to do something about it. That is what is going to achieve a one unified socialist Africa. If you're not ready to join an organization, you can at least do those things that we just laid out. If you are ready to join an organization, do those things in the organization. Don't become liberal and don't say anything when you see the same behaviors in the organization that you see under white supremacy and colonialism. That means it still needs to be addressed. And that means we're not going to be ready to achieve a one unified socialist Africa if we're still bringing over those Eurocentric values that we're trying so hard to work against. This is on all of us, you all. It is on all of us. It's not on non males. It's not on women. It is on all of us. And if we all don't fight back, we are all in for some serious problems up ahead. Join an organization that's working for justice. If you're not ready to do that, take responsibility for your privilege and use it to make a difference. Lives are counting on it, literally.
Ashe, obrigado, asante sana, madasi, thank you very much. Let's go to the next slide and just keep it going. And I think it's important to restate and to re-emphasize that this discussion we're presenting today is within one context. It's the context of the collective forward liberation and progress of African people. It's not that, so if you're looking at this from an individualistic perspective of how you see the world individually, you're not going to get it. And that's probably, if you don't get it, that's probably why you don't get it, because you're looking at it from an individualistic perspective. We're talking about it from a scientific perspective of understanding African history and understanding where we are today and what we need to move forward. So that's how we're coming at this. And so we challenge you. We challenge everybody. If you don't agree, to get with us. Let's have this struggle. We're prepared for it. We don't have any problem. We run to the struggle. It's the old African proverb. If you see me fighting a bear, help the bear. Throw honey on me. If you see me fighting a bear, help the bear. Pour honey on me. We don't want the easy way out. We know that the only way we can progress with combating backward ideas and practices is through intense ideological struggle, principled ideological struggle. And the problem we have now as a people is we're not willing to engage in honest struggle. We just want to go to social media and talk about people, that we're not going to solve a single problem with that cowardly approach. So let's break some of this stuff down, because there's several erroneous misconceptions on this question of patriarchy as it relates to Africa and African men. First, we have to understand that this question of patriarchy is an intrinsic part of the class struggle. And too many of us Africans, particularly African men, our analysis is 100% devoid of class struggle. What do we mean by class struggle? What we mean is that all of us are defined, wherever we live on the planet Earth, by our relationship to the means of production. What that means is, what is your relationship to the apparatus that produces, that dominates the economy where you live? What is your relationship to that structure? That defines your class. That's what defines it. And the other thing that defines it is, what are your interests in relationship to that means of production? What are your interests? How do you carry out your interests? How do you carry out your existence as it relates to that means of production? So, in other words, this is a capitalist world, dominated world that we live in. It's dominated by profit over people. Production is profit motivated. Production is not motivated by producing resources so that people can improve their lives. Progress is determined by how much money can be made by our labor. Our labor is defined, the value of our labor in a dominantly capitalist world is defined by how much profits our labor produces, not how many resources our labor produces to improve people's lives, independent of profit. So this is the problem that we have. We don't understand class. We don't understand class because there are many contradictions in this world today, but the primary contradiction is the people who own and control the wealth and against those of us who work for them. That's the primary contradiction in the world. And you can't deny that, because what's happened over the last couple of decades is you've had a sprinkling of African people who have jumped into that ruling class element. You have a sprinkle of African people who have become spokespersons for the ruling class. So what they exist to do, their interests as they see them, is advancing the interests of the capitalist system, regardless of what those interests do to the masses of African people. That's a class decision. And we don't understand that. We think that people like Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, we think that they're in unity with us as working people. That's what a lot of us believe. We think that Akite Daganti in Nigeria is in league with us. So because he's a billionaire, and all of the other billionaires that are in Africa, we think that we relate to them. Because Obama was president of the biggest capitalist empire in human history, we relate to that because he looks like us. And we don't have a class analysis. We don't understand that there's nothing about the capitalist system that has the same interests that we do. This is a system that was built on the backs of our people and is maintained by continuing to exploit our people. And we're so confused that we think just because the capitalist system recruits someone that looks like us to speak on behalf of its interests, that now all of a sudden that we can somehow integrate collectively into the capitalist system. And if we're not able to do that, that's because we didn't try hard enough. These are class contradictions, you all. So it's important to understand that patriarchy is a part of the class struggle. And if you understand that, then you realize that patriarchy did not come into Africa through colonialism. It was there long before colonialism. And the best resource I can recommend to you to get an understanding of that comes from Ancestor in Strategies and Tactics of the African Revolution. If you don't know who Sekou Touré is or was, he was a proponent of revolutionary Pan-Africanism, the first president of Guinea, West Africa, and a profound thinker and a practical activist as it relates to work to unite African people all over the world. From his work with Ghana and Kwame Nkrumah and Modibo Keita in Mali to form the first African Union in 1960s, of which the present Alliance of Sahel States grew their inspiration from his work there, from his work to provide Guinea as a launching pad for the African Party for the Independence of Guinea-Bissau, the PAIGC from Guinea-Bissau, to wage its anti-colonial war against Portugal, to drive Portugal out of Guinea-Bissau, from his work to support the African liberation movement here in the U.S., his sponsorship of delegates from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, in 1964 to come to Guinea. John Lewis, the congressman, went to Guinea on the invitation of Sekou Touré. A lot of SNCC organizers, Ruby Doris Smith Robinson, went to Guinea, was so inspired that she came back before she died at the tender age of 25. She came back and named her son Sekou, right? Cleve Sellers, who was one of the most militant activists within SNCC. You see his son now, Bakari Sellers. I don't know what happened. It's a prime example of how the kids don't necessarily reflect the value of the parents, or maybe Cleve Sellers' values changed as he got older. I don't know. But he went to Guinea. Miss Fannie Lou Hamer was there. And Miss Fannie Lou Hamer came back and talked about how she sat at the table with President Sekou Touré, and he treated her with more dignity than she had ever experienced growing up in Macomb County, Mississippi, with a third grade education as a sharecropper. So this is who Sekou Touré was. So you should investigate him if you don't know. But what he wrote about as it relates to class struggle, he talked about the history of class struggle, and he talked about how dominant economic periods have come in stages. And the first stage was communalism, where you had you had basic production, like people picked food and people built huts and people did these things collectively and they met each other's needs. And then as populations grew, that system became outdated. It was not sufficient enough to meet the needs of everyone. So, and then people figured out that they could dominate people and they could control their labor. So the system of slavery came about as the dominant economic system 10, 15,000 years ago. And this system of slavery can't be confused with the chattel slave system that ushered in the beginnings of industrialization and capitalism. The chattel slavery that's the reason why African people were in the Western world. You can't confuse those, because a lot of people want to confuse you. The Africans sold people into slavery. They're talking about traditional slavery, servitude, indentured servitude, 10, 15,000 years ago. This is economics, y'all, 101. This is my area. I'd love to debate it with you. And then from there, slavery gave way to feudalism, where you had kingdoms and queendoms. So that's why when you walk up to me and say, well, how you doing, king? I'm like, I ain't no king, because kingdoms and queendoms were oppressive regimes where the majority of people had nothing and worked for the people on top of the monarchy. And then from there, with the help of the transatlantic slave trade, the money was produced from that slave trade to create industrialism, where machine production produced hand production. And this brought in the dawn of the development of the capitalist system. And of course, it won't stop there. It'll move forward to socialism and then to communism. And at some point, human beings will figure out what comes after that to a higher level. But my point is that patriarchy came in during that 10 or 15,000 year period ago when slavery became a dominant economic system in the world. And men figured out they had the advantage in physically dominating women, and they took that advantage. And this began to develop these systems of patriarchy in Africa long before the Europeans just came 500 years ago. So long before that, patriarchy existed. And it was personified and institutionalized during the feudal phase of 9,000 years ago, where patriarchy became institutionalized under the kingdoms and the queendoms. So the concept that African men cannot be patriarchal, whenever an African man says that, I know they don't understand African history, or they're reading some version of African history that wants to disguise the truth. Because we can show you where patriarchy has been in Africa for a long, long time. Some of the practices like female genital mutilation, these are manifestations of historical patriarchy. That didn't start with colonialism. You're a damn fool if you try to argue that those kind of things started with colonialism. That's just simply not true. I mean, it's a damn lie, to be honest about it. So patriarchy has been there. And then also the other myth is that patriarchy, it isn't as bad as racism or white supremacy. They are both the same. They are both systems of oppression and exploitation. They are both the same. So if you argue that if you're an African man and you argue that African men cannot be patriarchal, that's the equivalent of a European arguing that Europeans can't be racist. It's the exact same thing. It's how I always respond to that is it's the same as me arguing about the process of delivering a baby. It's absolutely worthless. I've never experienced it and I never will. So who wants to hear my analysis of what it takes to deliver a baby? Who wants to hear an African man's analysis on how patriarchy works and who perpetuates it? I don't want to hear that shit. It's worthless to me. Who wants to hear a European talk about white supremacy and who perpetuates it? I have no interest at all in hearing that worthless shit. It's bullshit. It's worthless to me. You have never experienced it. You don't know what you're talking about, and you haven't studied it. And you've only studied people like most of these people. And one of the ways to determine whether African men have really seriously studied patriarchy, the first question I always ask, and I'm going to ask this to you listening right now, is what is the position of African women's organizations on the question of patriarchy? If you don't know that, then that's very telling about what you know or don't know. In other words, what I'm talking about is the women's wing of the African Party for the Independence of Guinea-Bissau, the PAIGC. What is the women's wing? UDEMU, the National Union of Guinea-Bissau Women. What is their position on patriarchy? You never even heard of UDEMU. What is his position of Pan-African Women's Organization, of the Pan-Africanist Congress? What is their position on patriarchy? What is the position of the women's wing of the Popular Movement for the Liberation of Angola? What is their position on patriarchy? Because all of those women wings have them. What is the position of the All African Women's Revolutionary Union, the AWRU, in the All African People's Revolutionary Party? If you don't know that, then you don't shut the hell up. You don't know what you're talking about. And we're sick of listening to people that don't know what they're talking about, acting like they do. It's a waste of time and energy, and we don't have that kind of time to waste. We got work to do, and you're clearly not doing it. So get the hell out of the way. And if you don't, we'll get organized enough to move your worthless ass out the way. That's what we're doing. And I hope that makes you mad as hell, because these people are so stupid that they say things. I'm talking about African men right now. I'm talking to my brothers. So goddamn dumb that they say things to me, like they say it over line. They won't say it in person. I would love for them to say it to me to my face, but I know that's not going to happen, and they know that's not going to happen. They say it online, like, "Well, you're a coward. You must be gay." And it's like, look, I'm not. If I was gay, I would tell you I was gay, but I'm not gay. And you know that has nothing to do with it anyway. And a lot of this resentment or opposition to patriarchy, like I don't have any. There's no reason why that makes it so that I feel like I have to oppose this question of anti-patriarchy. And I think that men that do, there's reasons for that. There's no, for me, like I don't have any. Why am I? Why am I thinking about our queer community? Like that's none of my business. I don't spend a minute thinking about that. And these African men that spend so much time opposed to that, to me that means either you're upset because someone close to you, your children or something, is queer, or maybe you have some issues within yourself that you're not mature and balanced enough to deal with around this question of who you are, because I don't have any issues like that. So it never comes up for me. So I have to think you're so invested in it, there has to be a reason for it, because it doesn't take anything from you. None of this takes nothing from you to say this is a patriarchal society. African men perpetuate patriarchy. We have to destroy patriarchy. You lose nothing by doing that. So if you're fighting so hard against doing that, there has to be a reason for that. Only you know that. I don't even want to spend enough time worried about it. That's your problem. You figure it out. We're just not going to let you get in our way. And so, what men must do, right? What we have to do, we have to study and listen to women on this question of patriarchy. We have to listen to non-gender people on this question. They're the ones who deal with this every day, just like Europeans need to listen to African people and indigenous people and Asian people about white supremacy. That's just, and not just any random ass African people on white supremacy, but people who are involved in the work to eradicate white supremacy need to be listened to. Women who are involved in non-gender binary people who are involved in the work to eradicate patriarchy need to be listened to. Not some random ass woman who doesn't know patriarchy from the hole in her rear end. I'm talking about people who are doing the work, right? Because this identity politics approach is not going to work. Well, my wife says the patriarchy is not a problem. Well, that just tells me your wife, like you, doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. It's not about individuals who happen to represent a particular identity automatically being bestowed subject matter expert status. It's about the people doing the work, and that qualifies them to have the most qualified analysis of the problem. So study and listen. And if you have a full position against patriarchy, but you don't know the African women's organizations, that's a problem you need to look at if you're serious about it. And don't conflate men who oppose patriarchy with European dominated bourgeoisie feminism. I hear that too often from African men. Well, African women, that's not how much they make on the job. Who said that? We're not talking about that. We don't have any damn jobs in this society. We don't have any protection of jobs in this society. They don't even, the cotton is picked. Our status as employees in this society subsided long ago. We're in the way to these people right now. And you still talk, well, they're fighting for higher wages. I don't know. Nobody's fighting for that. We can't even get damn jobs in this damn society. So we're not fighting for the same thing white women are fighting for. African women have never been fighting. And if that's what you think, that just further provides irrefutable evidence that you're a goddamn idiot. No African women have ever been fighting for that. There's not a single one. No African women organizations from Udamu and Guinea-Bissau all the way to Alpha Kappa Alpha Delta Sigma Theta. None of them are arguing that we should be talking about African women fighting for the same thing that white women are fighting. Nobody's saying that except you. And you don't know what's happening with African women. That's what that is. And so either we want liberation or we don't. Either we want unity or we don't. And if you don't want it, just say, I just want unity with people I can control. I just want unity with people I'm comfortable with. And then you take your sorry ass over there with the same sorry ass people that think like you, and you go ahead and sit there and have a boo-boo producing contest or whatever the hell you're going to do, because I don't see anything else productive coming out of what you're talking about. And then you do that. But those of us who are serious about liberation, we're going to be scientific about it. And that means that we're going to understand that unity means exactly what it says. It means every African must be unified, must be respected. All the other stuff, that's your personal business. I don't eat meat. I don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke weed. I don't get high. I exercise every day. I read constantly. I write constantly. I'm not going to say, well, you got to be a prolific writer to join this party. You can't eat meat if you join this party. You can't be someone that doesn't exercise if you don't, you can't join this party if you don't do that. That's idiocy. And to me, that's no different than what a lot of you are doing with patriarchy, with homophobia, and all. It's no different whatsoever. So we got to understand that and evolve for that. We will never get unity as long as you clowns are dictating what we need to do. And if you're a man and don't care about what I'm talking about, like Shakur said, you're part of the problem. But you won't be part for long. You know, we're all going to die. We all have a limited amount of time that we're here. And so a minister said many years ago at a service, he was criticizing the church. He had asked me to come there and speak. It was a large church. There were about 600 people in there. And he was telling them that the problem we have as a people, he said, it starts in this congregation. And he said, I oversaw, however you saw, he did a funeral the day before. I did a funeral the day before. And he said, and it occurred to me, we're never going to make progress until we have a lot more funerals. And the church went, oh my God, how could he say that? But as soon as he said it, as soon as the words left his mouth, I realized he was 100% correct. And I'll say that about our broader struggle. We need a lot more funerals. We do. We need a lot more y'all to go away forever. And that's how we'll make the progress that we need to make. That's how that'll happen, is when we have a whole lot more funerals. That's how that'll happen. And the good news is that that is exactly what's going to happen, myself included. We will get our asses out the way, and hopefully the youth can learn from the positives that we put out there and not have to deal with the same nonsense that has been perpetuated within our people for the last 10, 15 years, 1,000 years. So we thank you for joining us. We ask you to come back next week. You know, we're getting into the end of July. This is Pan-African Women's Day, period. So we're going to ask the question, why Pan-African Women's Day? Why is it important? And this is for men as well as people that aren't men. You should come through, because Pan-African Women's Day is just as much your responsibility as it is anyone else's. And if you don't see it like that, this is the reason why we're in the situation we're in. It's your fault. It's your goddamn fault. So stop saying it ain't my fault. It's your goddamn fault that we're in this. If you see things in a backward vision like that, you're the reason why we have to keep struggling like this. So the QR code in the upper left, the red and white one, gives you access to APRP programs. You can go to the Forward Ever shop and you can order clothes that reflect revolutionary messaging and supports our struggle by doing so. So please do that. Go to hoodcommunist.org, Revolutionary Pan-African blog. Please do that. If you're in Northern California, we host community self-defense classes every Thursday night. You're welcome. You don't need to sign up. You don't need to do. People keep asking me that. I'm like, what kind of background do you all have? Like, this is political activism. Just come through. Well, how do I sign up? Like, oh my goodness. Like, get out of this corporate model of everything. We're not doing that. We're not a damn corporation. We're a revolutionary organization. So we're organizing from that standpoint. So come out every Tuesday, 6 to 8 p.m., 2775 Cottage Way, like cottage cheese, Unit 15, 2775 Cottage Way, Unit 15, here in Sacramento. Everybody's welcome. It's worth a trip. We do sparring. We do self-defense maneuvers. We give lectures. We had a training on how to stop bleeding, how to deal with wounds. We do very valuable things. For those of you who right now, your only honest self-defense program is calling 911, you're in a world of hurt. So we give you the skills to function as a community. They are disappearing our people. And you sitting around here talking about call the police, and the police will come and disappear your ass. So come out on Thursday nights, 2775 Cottage Way, Unit 15, Sacramento. Then we have Pan-African Women's Day coming up, programs coming up. August 1st in Oakland, California at Lake Merritt. We're going to have a program 3 to 5 p.m. And then the next Saturday, August 8th, I have the wrong flyer up there. Sorry about that, but it should be two different flyers. But on August 8th, we're having a program here in Sacramento from 3 to 5. It's going to be at McClatchy Park, 5th and 33rd Street. Look for the large red, black, and green flag in both instances. There's going to be edutainment. There's going to be positive inspiration. We'll have food for you. You don't want to miss it. So come out, join the APRP at APRP-INTL, become a monthly sponsor of Bikina Books. In the black and white QR code in the bottom right, you can become a sponsor, and that's APRP work at home in the Sahel, in Burkina Faso and Niger. And that's how we bring revolutionary literature, so we can bring revolutionary work study processes to the Sahel region. And my book in the upper right, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. The QR code is right next to it. It is a great organizing book. Don't take my word for it. There are plenty of reviews on it. When you scan the QR code, you will see them. So check them out. Clearly, I don't know all those people, but they got the book and they read it and they like it. I don't know any of them, really. Only like 2 or 3 of them I know. And there's like 70 reviews there. So check that out. And 100% of the proceeds go towards anti-fascist work, the Pan-Africanist work that we do. All of these events we're talking to you about need money. I get a lot of the money to fund that through that. We have so call your bookstore, have them order the books and get them in there. Call your library and have them get in there, and that's where you help the struggle. We're going to be outdoors. There's no electricity. I just bought a solar generator, and that comes from money I've earned from this book, and that's going to be used to advance our people's struggle. So get involved. As James Brown said, get involved. Stay strong, forward ever. Enjoy the rest of your day.